It's time for the Red Zone Warriors Fantasy Football Show with Rob the Commish Smith, Jim the Jimmer Kiernan, and Jay Cushman Corson. Let's talk some fantasy football, boys.
I'm going to go ahead and start and talk about somebody that I am pretty high on. This is one Mr. Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen is currently ADP in PPR leagues going 8th tight end off the board. You can get him close to the end of the 7th round. I have him at 5. Greg Olsen had 73 receptions last year for over 800 yards, 6 touchdowns in 2013. That made him the 7th best tight end of last season. He was 5th in targets. That's obviously, we covered the fact that Cam Newton had no one to throw the ball to, so it's not a big surprise he was 5th in targets. But again, his wide receivers haven't, exactly increased all that much. So 5th in targets last year, I see that to be at least the same, if not better. He was also 6th in reception, so he's not only getting the targets, he's actually catching the ball. And he was 6th in receiving yards for tight ends. Those are all very good things. He caught over 66% of those targets. That's better than Jimmy Graham. That's better than Gronkowski when he actually played the 6 or 8 games that he actually played in. So the guy is very good. He gets a lot of targets. He catches the ball at a high rate. He's really the only legitimate target for Cam. I think we've covered that. Steve Smith, like we said, is gone. He's got some guys like Cotchery and Jason Avant and so forth, and a rookie there. So I think he's going to rely on Greg Olsen quite a bit. That's why I have him above ADP, and I have him in the top 5. I think his targets will go up from the 117 that they were last year, and they will go up from the 73 receptions that he had. Remember, Steve Smith is gone, and Steve Smith, even though he was older and he's 3'9", and he would just as soon punch you in the face as look at you, he accounted for 115 targets last year, and now he is gone. Those targets have to go somewhere, and with Cotchery and Benjamin and Jason Avant, I think the good money is on the fact that Greg Olsen is probably going to get a larger percentage of those 115 targets in general. So I see him as getting close to 80 catches, 850 yards or so. I see his touchdowns going up into the 8-9 range for 2014, and I see him as a solid top 5 tight end that you can get currently in ADP at the end of the 7th round.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said earlier, I don't think Cam's going to have a great year, but if he's going to be throwing the ball, this is pretty much the only guy he's going to be throwing the ball to that has any consistency. He's going to get a lot of targets. PPR leagues, I think Greg Olsen is definitely going to be a beast. So I've got him at 6, and I would definitely confidently draft him as my starting tight end for sure. Jim?
Yeah, I think he's going to get 1,000 yards, quite frankly, and so I think you're a little low on that projection. Dude catches ball is not great run after catch, but he's a great target, and he's definitely, in my opinion, going to break into that top 5 category, so that's why I'm very big on him this year.
Okay. All right, we're going to talk about Jordan Reed, another very polarizing tight end figure in the NFL. And then, guys, again, listeners, that's the reason we chose these guys. They're question marks for everybody. We don't know what to do with them. Are they high? They're obviously high risk reward. Do we say screw it, or it's not worth the risk because of their injury history and so forth? But Jordan Reed had an incredible start to the season. Had some concussion issues. His ADP is currently 7th in PPR league, so people are still having some confidence in him, I guess, thinking the offseason heals up his concussions and he may not, have them again or whatever the case. But, you can draft him in the early 7th round. Cushman, Jay, you've got him at 5th. I'm a little less bullish on him because of the concussion scenario. I've got him at 7. Jimmer also has him actually at 6. So Jay, why do you have him at 5? And are you just not concerned that his concussion issues are going to plague him throughout the next season?
Well, that's the thing. If this guy keeps his brain from slashing around in his head for a little while, he's easily a top 5 tight end. In 2013, obviously he finished the season on injured reserve, but if we look at the 9 games that started, prior to that, he caught 45 balls for 499 yards, had 3 touchdowns. Now that's an average of 11.1 yards per reception. That's pretty damn good. The 45 receptions that he had were on 59 targets, which means Reed actually caught 76% of the passes thrown his way, which is better than Graham, better than Gronk, and even better than the last guy we talked about, Greg Olsen. It's a smaller, piece that you're looking at, but just perspective on that number, yeah. Gronk had 60%, and Graham had 58%. So I think he's going to be really good with 16 games under his belt if he can stay healthy. So, and then beyond Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, Washington doesn't really have much in the way of receiving threats. So Reed will definitely be heavily featured in the offense. I think he's got the full offseason to recover. RG3 is going to be back healthy under center, so I think you look for Reed to flourish this year in Washington. Some people are worried about drafting him too early, but I think he's an elite tight end one heading into 2014. So definitely, don't sleep on this guy because he's going to be somebody that's going to put up points for sure.
Well, Jay, let me ask you this before Jimmer comes in on this. And is Jordan Reed? Obviously you have him at 5th. If you pick up Jordan Reed, you draft him somewhere in the 7th round or whatnot, because of the concerns of his concussions, are you definitely going to backfill that with a tight end like a Delaney Walker or somebody in later rounds, or are you just going to stick with him and then pick someone up off waivers down the season if necessary?
I would most likely draft somebody late, but I probably wouldn't. If there was nobody there that I really liked, I wouldn't be against waiting and seeing who's doing well off the waiver wires and grabbing somebody there. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to backfill. The guy does have brain sloshy issues.
Yeah, Jimmer, what are your thoughts on Reed? Is it somebody you'd risk drafting, or are you just staying away from him altogether?
I think he's absolutely draftable. I think he's going to be well worth the draft pick wherever he falls. If he falls into your lap in a later round, he's absolutely draftable, and he's the kind of guy I think he's going to play the full season this year. So I think you don't need to streamline him with another guy, in my opinion. So.
Okay. Well, for me, this is the thing. I've got him lower than everybody else, but granted, it's at 7. You guys have him at like 5 and 6, so it's not ridiculous. The thing is about Jordan Reed, we made jokes about, which I don't know if it was necessarily funny or not, when we talked about, last night he just laid his head on his pillow and got a concussion. But the reality is he has significant concussion history. And he was a rookie last year, guys, and this wasn't just from last year that he had multiple concussions. He had this back in college. Some guys do not respond well. Not that people respond well to concussions, but some people can heal from them. Some people are more affected by them. Some people take longer to heal from them. That is just a fact that we have seen, and that's what makes me nervous about Jordan Reed. It has nothing to do with his talent, because clearly he's talented. Jordan Reed was on pace last season to be one of the most productive rookie tight ends of all time. Yes, of all time. That's how good he was in that offense, and that's with an RG3 that was struggling. So the guy is gifted. He's talented. There's no question about it. But he has these concussion issues, and that's what concerns me, like it concerns me with Gronk and all his injuries. So to me, Jordan Reed is the ultimate risk-reward tight end. Depending on how your strategy is, depending if you're, an aggressive player, you want to, put all your money in the bank on Jordan Reed and draft him in the 7th or whatever the case. I think he's risk-reward. For me personally, if he does fall to me and I get him in a spot that I think it's good value, I in all likelihood probably will back him up, because at some point I think it's probably, unfortunately for him, inevitable that he's going to miss quite a few games, and I'm going to feel better if I have somebody to back him up. But that's just my opinion. But it's unfortunate because the guy's obviously a clear talent. So we're going to move on to another guy who broke out last season, another clearly gifted tight end, and this is one Mr. Charles Clay. Charles Clay, current ADP is 14. He's going off the board in 12-man leagues at the beginning of the 12th round. Jimmer, you have him at 14th. Looking where, we've got him kind of in similar areas. I've got him at 12. Jay, I'm trying to look. You've got him at 14. So we're all about in that ballpark. What do you think about Charles Clay? Do you think he can continue to break out, or is the competition that he now has there going to hinder him, and he's going to have that sophomore slump that everyone talks about?
Well, he's not going to have a sophomore slump because he's already been through that sophomore slump. He honestly, his first 3 years with the Dolphins, he quite frankly was irrelevant. He played like crap. He wasn't talented as far as anyone's concerned. And actually last year he kind of came out of nowhere, quite frankly. And he caught just almost 800 yards and he got 6 TDs. That is remarkable. All right. Did not see this guy coming out of anywhere, and obviously that puts him, quite frankly, just in the cusp of top 10 numbers for tight ends. He is in a contract year, which I think is a huge deal. New management, the Miami Brass, they're looking to lock him up probably in midseason, and it's going to be based on his performance if he starts strong. So I think he's very viable drafting. I would definitely have him tethered with another guy, in my opinion, but I think he's very draftable. Basically, the general fantasy consensus says that he's better than his 14th tight end drafting pick. So what that tells me there is that, hey, maybe there's something more to him than what we thought. I think if you got a guy like Gronk, this is somebody you're going to want to have as your tether guy and just have him for rock consistency. The nearly 70 receptions is something I found very interesting. PPR, that's a huge deal. In a traditional pro set offense that they're in, and they don't really have any sort of gimmicks, so to speak, because they're kind of boring, quite frankly. This guy could be a real breakthrough and a real gem in that. But do you want to risk, drafting a top 5 tight end and wait and take a gamble on a guy like this? I don't know. I mean, that's just up for your own opinions. But he's somebody, and Jay, I mean, back me up on this. I mean, if this is something where you don't get one of the top 5, guys, aka not Jimmy Graham guys, but really close to Jimmy Graham guys, is this a guy that you're going to want to draft a second tight end for, or are you going to just pick up a second tight end off the waiver if you get this guy?
Yeah, I would definitely. This guy would be somebody I would have to have another tight end with. I don't trust him. Not a real big believer in Miami's offense per se. Anyway, I'm going to probably be staying away from most of the guys that are down there. I would definitely want to have somebody to back this guy up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he was so relevant his rookie year, I thought he was a sophomore. But, Clay, people forget about this guy, but this was a waiver wire wonder last year, and people picked him up all over the place. The guy, at least in our scoring in PPR, he finished 7th last year, and he was clearly a favorite of Ryan Tannehill in that offense. And, I mean, Ryan Tannehill got sacked more than any other quarterback in the NFL, so I think it was just, get the ball in the shotgun that gives me an extra second and a half, and I need to throw it within half a second before I'm on my back. So I think that may be part of why Clay had so many receptions. So, I really don't know what to think of the guy. He's not somebody that I'm necessarily targeting. I think this would be a streaming approach again. If I'm going to take that route with tight ends. I mean, their offensive line, dear God, it can't get any worse. And guys who have bad offensive lines, like we saw last year with Tannehill, they do rely heavily on their tight end. So I think he can put up some production for you. But to rely on him as your tight end 1, even in a 12-man league, that's going to be sketchy and risky at best.
Yeah, that's what we would call ballsy. But we'll move on now to another guy that probably wouldn't be so ballsy to have as your number 1 tight end. I've actually got him at 8. His 9th. Rob, you also have him at 8. That's Dennis Pitta. So wow us with the tales of Dennis Pitta.
Dennis Pitta, yeah. Like you said, ADP ninth. He's going at the kind of towards the early and middle part of the eighth round. I've got him at eighth as well as you, Cushman. I don't know if let's see.
I got him at 9.
Okay, so we're all right in that same ballpark. You know, he had a right hip fracture slash dislocation injury, which doesn't make any sense to me because if it's, I mean, can it be fractured and dislocated, or if it's fractured, you're just fucked from the get-go? I don't really know, but that's what the verbiage said. So, but anyway, but given that injury, it allowed him to only play the final 4 games of last season. But in those 4 games, he put up 20 catches, which is 5 per game. You know, PPR, that's not bad, especially for a tight end by any means. He put up 169 yards, you know, and a touchdown. So he played pretty well, especially given the fact that he was coming off of this hip fracture. In 2012, the year prior, he only started in 5 games, but he played in all 16. He put up 61 receptions for 669 yards, 7 touchdowns, ranking him as 7th in PPR in tight end at that season. So he has a history of being a top 10 tight end, somebody that you can count on, especially, you know, kind of if you want to wait on somebody and not get one of the upper echelon guys. The Ravens signed Pitta to a 5-year, $32 million deal in this offseason, so clearly they are not concerned with his hip fracture slash dislocation scenario. He's very important to that team. You know, they don't have a plethora of wide receivers to go to outside of Torrey Smith. And if you've watched them, Pitta is Flacco's go-to guy. I mean, there's no denying it. I mean, he comes back from freaking hip fracture surgery and he gets 5 catches a game. I mean, that's Flacco looks for him early and often. Like I said, other than him, you've just got Torrey Smith and Jacoby Jones essentially. So they did just acquire 40-year-old Steve Smith. You know, I don't know how much he's gonna add to that offense. I mean, he's a feisty guy. He's gonna get some catches. He's gonna throw some punches. We all know that. But at the end of the day, you know, Dennis Pitta is gonna be good value. He's gonna put up numbers. He's gonna do well for you in a tight end 1 position, especially if you want to wait till the 7th or later rounds to get him. You know, so at the end of the day, I see him getting, you know, upwards of 70 receptions, you know, about 700 yards, 6 or so touchdowns, especially because the running back situation there is a cluster. I mean, you know, who the hell knows Ray Rice and his issues, how he's going to perform. In all likelihood, he's going to be suspended. I honestly think he's going to get anywhere from 2 to 4 games. I think I would bet a couch shot on that right now. You know, we've seen that before from the commissioner. It doesn't have to be a legal situation for him to put down a suspension, especially the fact that it was on videotape. He will be suspended, in my opinion. Bernard Pierce, again, the offensive line was horrendous, but Bernard Pierce put up even worse numbers than Ray Rice did when he was in there. So the running game is crap. He's going to rely on his main target, which is Dennis Pitta. He's going to put up good yards, and good numbers, and good receptions for you, especially in a PPR. So feel very comfortable picking him in the 7th, 8th round. You know, ADP 9th as your, you know, 8th, 7th, whatever tight end going into 2014.
Yeah, I agree. I think the lack of other targets there makes Dennis Pitta somebody that I'll be looking at as my tight end and any fantasy squad I'm playing on this year. I'll definitely be looking into him and interested.
So, Jimmer, is Pitta somebody that you would target and look at and feel comfortable with starting?
I agree.
All right, guys. Well, that wraps it up for our quarterbacks and tight ends for this podcast. On our next show, we are actually working to put together a 10 to 12 man or woman, for that matter, mock draft. Hopefully, sometime next Thursday. We're going to have a good group of fantasy football degenerates, such as ourselves, to do a live on the air and discuss our picks as we pick them. our rationale and mentality about why we picked a guy where and what our thinking process is for doing so. So I don't know about you guys, but when I listen to podcasts, that's one of the favorite things I listen to is mock drafts and listening to why these guys do what they do. So go ahead and look out for that. We'll definitely keep you posted via Twitter for when that is going to be done. You can watch it live on YouTube and then when we're going to be releasing that. But again, we're hoping to do that this coming Thursday. In the meantime, go to redzonewarriors.com. You can watch all of our previous episodes. You can see our rankings. You can subscribe to the show via iTunes. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Tweet us your fantasy football questions at RedZoneWarriors. So for the Cushman, the Jimmer, I am Rob Smith. And remember, if you are taking a fantasy football season off, then you are already losing. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
I'm drafting QBs in the first 3 rounds.